Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, the show right here on Let's Talk Entertainment. We're going back all the way to 2018. I've been attempting to read and review each of the roughly 600 short stories written by Ray Bradbury in his long and illustrious career. Today I'm up to story number 246 overall, which is also the 7th of 22 stories in his collection from 2009, We'll Always Have Paris. Today's story is called Ma Perkins Comes to Stay, and if I don't say so myself, I think it's the best story in the collection so far, and it's also certainly the longest. Some of the recent stories have been a little bit brief for my liking, but it's pretty nice to see Bradbury stretch things out just a little bit and really give us the opportunity to absorb this world. So the way that these reviews work is I try to do a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, and then afterwards sort of wrap it up with a very light analysis of what it all means to me, what I took away from it. Is it a good story worth your time to read? And I certainly think in this case it is definitely worth your time to read. All right, so an uptight businessman, Joe Tiller, walks into his apartment one evening and finds his wife there, Annie, and also an old woman who she insists is Ma Perkins. However, he knows, as many people in this world know, is that Ma Perkins is a fictional radio character who he's heard and she's heard on the radio for these past 10 years. She says that Ma is coming to stay for the year to help things out around the house, and Joe is very annoyed. That night, while they sleep, or rather he wakes up and she's gone, she's not in the house, but he does hear a voice on the radio. She's apparently back in the radio. The next evening, Joe calls over his psychologist friend, trying to cure Annie of her delusion, and he's getting increasingly upset as this whole conversation's going on, but the psychologist tries to convince them that it's your mother-in-law, it's not this character, it's just your mother-in-law, they're having fun with you, but of course, Joe knows that her mother is in fact dead. When he goes to work the next day, he finds Ma Perkins cleaning his office, but she doesn't appear to know him. And he comes to the conclusion that there must be a million different Ma Perkins, each coming out of a different radio. And he's increasingly, again, losing his mind, becoming more and more irate and uncomfortable and unstable. And he sort of yells to all the women stenographers working in his office and says, who's hiding a radio? And finally they admit that there's a radio in the bathroom that you listen to while they're smoking. So he goes into the bathroom and he destroys the radio, thinking, okay, I've taken care of that. But when he gets back home, he hears an entire scene going on. There seems to be a dinner party going on. Something is happening in there. And Ma Perkins is, of course, with them. At this point, he's totally losing his mind and he wants to destroy the radio. Annie reveals to him that she thinks he's been a horrible husband to her these last 10 years, neglecting her and leaving her alone all day by herself with only the radio to keep her company. He's getting loud, he's getting crazy, the noise attracts the landlord calls the police, and finally Joe strangles Ma Perkins to death, which is exactly what they wanted him to do. Old woman's laying dead on the floor, and the police that is, they cuff him and begin hauling him away. As they're walking down the hallway, there's a door open into one of the other apartments, and he looks inside, and he sort of sees his own apartment, and he sees his wife, and he sees these dinner guests and Ma Perkins, all having a grand old time as if out of a scene from his life, as if it were also on the radio. All right, so as I said, this might be the best story in the collection so far. Actually, I would say it's absolutely the best story in the collection so far. So there you go. I'm committing to that version of the story. With a name like Perkins, when Ma Perkins shows up, I immediately begin to think of Anthony Perkins, the actor from Psycho, playing Norman Bates and his mother, and I sort of get that sort of Bates Motel vibe, although there's not a lot of horror really going on in this story beyond that, but that's something that really came to my mind very quickly, and I can't help but think that maybe Bradbury was thinking about that as well. The story, I guess, is about, in a sense, mass hallucination in the modern entertainment age. This idea that we all experience together or alone in some cases, whether it's, in the theater, but also could be at home on television, on the radio, in a book. These journeys into these worlds where these characters become real to us if we spend enough time with them, and yet they're not real, and we all have a different personal relationship with these scenes and with these characters. And then I sort of think about how, for me, like Annie, I oftentimes, as a child especially, spent, hours and hours in my bedroom escaping from sort of the noise and the commotion of the angry parents fighting downstairs. And the fiction certainly became a refuge for me. But it's also interesting to see this sort of juxtaposed against the husband, against Joe. Joe is boring, overworked, type A, greedy businessman, who ignores his wife and sort of sees himself as, what I'm doing to make the money is more important than actually why I'm doing it for. And I kind of feel like he's the type of person who sort of would look upon the type of people who, like us, who have these types of YouTube channels and go to these videos and have these discussions, nerds, for lack of a better word, us geeks. I kind of think that they must look at us like aliens, like broken people. Like, why are you spending all of these time with these characters? This doesn't matter. It's all fake. It's not the real world. And yet for us, these worlds that Bradbury created are places. They're refuge, but they're also places of enlightenment, like this story, which sort of has this message about being you can be distant in your absorption of these stories, but also people who are unkind to you can sort of force you into these worlds, into these wonderful escapes. And that's really a balancing act of do you spend too much time there, but also how much time do you need to spend there to sort of to insulate yourself against mistreatment and against the harshness of reality. And what can we do to make a reality that is better for everyone, so that people don't feel the need to constantly escape. But at the same time, we all know that fiction is not just escape. It is a source of enlightenment. It is a source of learning empathy. I think that's a big problem in our world right now, which is the lack of empathy. And I think that comes from when people aren't reading good books, not watching at times the right movies, the right TV shows. They're not learning the empathy to the degree that they should. And I go back to a lot of the times is there's an episode of The Walking Dead that was very divisive, where Negan bashes in the skulls of a couple of people, and a lot of people stopped watching the show after that point, thinking, oh, it's too disgusting, it's just violence, pornography. But no, the truth of the matter is you all felt very, very uncomfortable by this because you were having the correct reaction, which is to feel empathy for the victims and disgust for the villain. And in our world, particularly where many of us are from, where they call it the first world, but countries that are generally peaceful and generally prosperous, there's a lot of natural lessons that we maybe don't learn from our real lives, and that's because of the prosperity. And on the other hand, the place to learn them is from the arts. That's the importance of the arts. It's not just escape. It's not just recreation. It is a teaching tool. You don't want it to be too heavy-handed, but you do want to learn the easy way how to empathize with people and not to be cruel, as opposed to having to learn the hard way. And I think that if you took a survey, you'd find that a lot of the cruel people in the world were not great aficionados of the arts. And I think that they may have missed some key lessons, and I think that is a very important thing, which is why we need to keep arts in the schools. So there you have it. That is Ma Perkins Comes to Stay, story number 7 of 22 in We'll Always Have Paris. Next time, which will probably be maybe next week, but maybe sooner, we'll be looking at a story called Doubles, which is the latest in this collection as we quickly approach the halfway point. So thanks for tuning in. Show empathy for your common men. Don't escape too much into this fantasy world, but when you do, make sure you learn the lessons. And I will see you again soon. See you later.